Hey everybody, how's it going? What I want to show you today is one of the dinosaurs mentioned in the Bible. His name is Behemoth. Now, a lot of people don't think that the Bible mentions dinosaurs, but in fact it does, and very specifically it does. The one we're going to talk about today is Behemoth, which the Bible does talk about other animals, other dinosaurs, but today we're just going to focus on Behemoth. Now, before we get started, let me read to you something here in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 20 and 21. Now it reads, O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoiding profane and vain babblings and oppositions of science falsely so called, which some professing have erred concerning the faith. Grace be with thee. Amen. So we're seeing here there is a science falsely so called, or something that's called science that really is not science. It's not actually science. And it says, which some professing have erred concerning the faith. So this so-called false science has caused some people to not believe the Bible. They've erred concerning the faith. They don't believe the Bible because of this so-called false science. Now, what is this science falsely so-called? Well, this is going to be your evolution, your Big Bang, things like that. That these people who hate God, they're contrary to God, they will say anything they need to say to try to disprove the Bible if they can. And they have come up with this theory of evolution and this Big Bang theory where everything created itself from absolutely nothing. And this is the science falsely so called. They call this science, they slap it in a textbook, and they teach it to our kids as a fact, when in reality, it's not a fact at all. It's untestable, it's unobservable, it's unprovable. It has not been proven. It can't be even proven or disproven. It's not observable. And one of the very definitions of science is things you can observe or test. And these things you cannot do that. So they have called them facts. They slapped them in the textbooks, and they're teaching people this as a fact, as if it's proven, when in reality it's not proven. It's all ideas. In fact, it's more like a religion, because you have to have faith that it's true, because you can't actually see that it is. There's no evidence to see that it actually is true, and in fact, there's more evidence that contradicts the theory of evolution and the Big Bang than anything. Like the fact that they found, atheist scientists found T-Rex tissue in a bone, soft tissue. And they found other tissues now. Tissues that couldn't survive 1,000,000 years under any conditions, let alone 60 million years, which is when they say the T-Rex lived. How on earth would it survive that long? It can't even survive 1,000,000 years. How's it going to survive 60 million? Yet they found it. And this lady, this atheist scientist that found this T-Rex bone with the soft tissue, her questioning on it was, wow, how can this tissue survive 60 million years? When she should have been asking herself, is it actually 60 million years old? But no, they never want to think that way. They always want to ignore the Bible, which has right in it that dinosaurs existed with humans. We were made on the same day of creation. And you can see the evidence of this all over the place. You know, like for the example, them finding the soft tissue. And the fact that the Bible said these creatures existed and they were with us. Then, years later, then they dig up bones and prove what the Bible actually had already said. that these large creatures existed. Now, these types of people will tell you that dinosaurs died off from some sort of natural disaster like an asteroid impact. But then they will turn around and tell you that dinosaurs turned into birds. So did they die off from an asteroid impact, a global extinction event, or did they turn into birds? They don't even know which theory they want to go with anymore. And they think that they turned into birds because they find birds on upper levels, upper layers of the soil, right? And they'll find something like a T-Rex down on the bottom, down lower. And this is how they get their little timeline. But the flood, if you remember the great flood, Noah's Ark, a T-Rex is going to have a much harder time swimming. He's going to sink. He's going to end up on the bottom. With those little arms, he's not going to be able to swim very well. But birds are going to fly around, land on things. They're going to make it a lot longer through that flood event than other creatures would that can't swim, or would only be able to swim for so long. They're going to end up on different layers than birds, which are going to end up on these upper layers, right? And trilobites, they're going to end up on the bottom, which is where you see them. That's common sense. But they try to tell you that that's proving a chain of events in evolution and dinosaurs turning into birds. And it's total nonsense. And they label it as a fact, put it in a textbook, and cause people to not believe the Bible because they call these things a fact, when in reality they are not factual at all. They're only ideas. They're more like a religion, like I said. You have to have faith in this. It's not actually observable or testable. So, as we can see here in 1 Timothy, there is a science falsely so called that have caused some to not believe the faith, to not have faith. And, a lot of naysayers will always try to say things like, well, where's the dinosaurs in the Bible? Where are they? But they're looking for the word dinosaur in the Bible, which the word dinosaur wasn't even invented till like 1842 or something. You're not going to see the word dinosaur in the Bible. Now, Adam, of course, named the animals. They were created with us. He didn't call all of them dinosaurs, right? Now, he had a specific name for this certain dinosaur that we're going to talk about here. It's called Behemoth. Now, before I read about Behemoth, let me first read a little bit of the scripture leading up to it, so you can see that right here God's talking to Job, and he's going through all these different types of animals with Job. He's talking about all these different animals, many of which exist right now, today. So basically God's going through all these different animals, and then he goes into a fictional large dinosaur, which, I'll come right out and tell you, Behemoth that we're going to read about is some sort of sauropod. Like an apatosaurus, a seismosaurus, or like a brachiosaurus, one of the big long-necked dinosaurs. That's what Behemoth is. So basically, God's talking about all these animals that we know exist and we see today. And then he goes into talking about this big long-necked dinosaur, just as normal as the other ones, but he's talking about this big dinosaur as the chief of the ways of God. In other words, it's the largest, kind of the greatest in size that he made. Land animal. So you can clearly see the consistency in him talking about all the different animals that he made, and that there are, and talking about another one, which is Behemoth. Now, let me read a little bit of this to you here. I'll start off here in chapter 39. Reads, Knowest thou the time when the wild goats of the rock bring forth? Or canst thou mark when the hinds do calve? Canst thou number the months that they fulfill? Or knowest thou the time when they bring forth? They bow themselves, they bring forth their young ones, they cast out their sorrows. Their young ones are in good liking. They grow up with corn. They go forth and return not unto them. Who hath sent out the wild ass free? Or who hath loosed the bands of the wild ass? Whose house I have made with the wilderness, and the barren land his dwellings. He scorneth the multitude of the city, neither regardeth he the crying of the driver. The range of the mountains is his pasture, and he searcheth after every green thing. Will a unicorn be willing to serve thee, or abide by thy crib? And yes, unicorn. It's not a mythical creature like what you see today with drawings and stuff, and the rainbow, the horse, and the rainbow, and the twisty horn. The unicorn was an actual animal. It's mentioned in the Bible 9 times. And it's described as an animal that was hard for them to tame. They couldn't tame it to work for them, to plow the fields. Said it was wild. It said it skipped like a calf. So the unicorn is some sort of real animal with a horn. How many dinosaurs do they dig up and they have a horn? You know, this could have been a dinosaur of some sort. Or maybe it was the rhino. Who knows? But whatever it is, the unicorn, it was something that did exist. And I'm not going to get into that too far. That'll be good for another video. But absolutely, the unicorn exists. I mean, there are fish and creatures that live and survive on the bottom of the ocean with all that water pressure, and it doesn't crush them. But it's less believable to believe that there could have been some animal with one horn that skipped like a calf. You can't let, like, the things that people draw and what you see today make you think that that's just not a reality, that it couldn't have been. No, I don't think it looked like the typical picture you see on a little girl's lunchbox or something. No, I don't think that, but I do think it was a real animal, probably some sort of dinosaur. Anyway, continuing on. Canst thou bind the unicorn with his band in the furrow, or will he harrow the valleys after thee? Wilt thou trust him because his strength is great, or wilt thou leave thy labor to him? Wilt thou believe him that he will bring home thy seed and gather it into thy barn? See, the unicorn, he's saying, do you think he's going to work for you? You can't get him to work for you. He's too wild. Gavest thou the goodly wings unto the peacocks, or wings and feathers unto the ostrich, which leaveth her eggs in the earth, and warmeth them in dust, and forgetteth that the foot may crush them, or that the wild beast may break them? She is hardened against her young ones, as though they were not hers. Her labor is in vain, without fear, because God hath deprived her of wisdom, neither hath he imparted to her understanding. What time she lifteth up herself on high, she scorneth the horse and his rider. Hast thou given the horse strength? Hast thou clothed his neck with thunder? Canst thou make him afraid as a grasshopper? The glory of his nostrils is terrible. He paweth in the valley, and he rejoiceth in his strength. He goeth on to meet the armed men. He mocketh at fear, and is not affrighted. Neither turneth he back from the sword. The quiver rattleth against him, the glittering spear and the shield. He swalloweth the ground with fierceness and rage, neither believeth he that it is the sound of the trumpet. He saith among the trumpets, Ha ha, and he smelleth the battle afar off. The thunder of the captains and the shouting. Doth the hawk fly by thy wisdom, and stretch her wings toward the south? Doth the eagle mount up at thy command, and make her nest on high? She dwelleth and abideth on the rock, upon the crag of the rock, in the strong place. From thence she seeketh the prey, and her eyes behold afar off. Her young ones also suck up blood, and where the slain are, there is she. Moreover, the Lord answered Job, and said, Shall he that contendeth with the Almighty instruct him? He that reproveth God, let him answer it. Then Job answered the Lord, and said, Behold, I am vile. It goes on and on and on. So you see how the Lord's talking to Job about all these different kind of animals. He's talking to Job about all this stuff. He's talking about the ostrich. He's talking about the eagle, the hawk, horse, and etc. All these different real animals that we see all the time. And then here coming in on verse 15 in Job 40, verse 15, it starts talking about Behemoth, and that's where we're going to start reading here. So you can clearly see the consistency with all the animals, and then mentioning another one, which is the greatest land animal that God made, the biggest, the largest, which is a dinosaur. The Bible absolutely mentions dinosaurs. And so here we are, starting off in verse 15. Reads, Behold now, Behemoth, which I made with thee, he eateth grass as an ox. So we see here, Behemoth, God says, I made him with thee. He eats grass as an ox. He was made with us. This animal was made with us on the 6th day of creation. He eats grass as an ox. Lo now, his strength is in his loins, and his force is in the navel of his belly. So he has great strength in his stomach and legs, in his loins. He moveth his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his stones are wrapped together. Look, he moveth his tail like a cedar. Imagine a cedar tree. A huge, giant tree. Huge, giant cedar tree. What kind of animal can you think of that has a tail like that? Swaying back and forth. Like a huge, sweet cedar tree. A lot of these false, corrupted Bibles, and even some study Bibles, like to put by this animal that it's an elephant. Does an elephant have a tail that it could swing like a cedar? No. Heck no. So he moveth his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his stones are wrapped together. His bones are as strong pieces of brass. His bones are like bars of iron. He is the chief of the ways of God. He that made him can make his sword to approach unto him. So he has really strong bones. Now if you think of, now they talk about the Brachiosaurus, for example, has the big long neck. And to be able to lift that neck up, it says that the vertebrae in the neck were really strong, yet hollow and light. And if you think of brass, brass is really strong, yet hollow and not heavy, not very heavy. So I like that description of it right there. His bones are strong, or as strong pieces of brass. Then his bones are like bars of iron. You know, you got the strong bones like in the legs, like strong pieces of iron. It says he's the chief of the ways of God, which means he's like the greatest land animal, the biggest, largest that God made. With the dinosaur bones that these people dig up, the biggest one they found fits this description perfectly, which is a sauropod of a sort. Now I forget which one is the biggest one, whether it's the Brachiosaurus, the Seismosaurus, the Apatosaurus. I mean, there's so many of them, but it's one from that family, the sauropod family. And by what they've found and what God's saying is the chief of his ways, they match perfectly. And then he goes on to say, he that made him can make his sword to approach unto him. Well, God made him. And God's saying, you know, I can take him out. I can bring my sword unto him and cause him to die off. And, you know, that's happened. Surely the mountains bring him forth food, where all the beasts of the field play. You notice how it says that. Surely the mountains bring him forth food, where all the beasts of the field play. It says where all the beasts of the field play, almost like, you know, he's a lot bigger than a lot of the other creatures running around. It reads, he lieth under the shady trees, in the covert of the reed and fens. The shady trees cover him with their shadow. The willows of the brook compass him about. Behold, he drinketh up a river, and hasteth not. He trusteth that he can draw up Jordan into his mouth. Look at this. Behold, he drinketh up a river, and he trusteth that he can draw up Jordan, the Jordan River, into his mouth. So he's so big that they're using the wording, behold, he drinketh up a river. It's like he can drink up a river. He's so big and he drinks so much water. And he's even so big that he trusteth that he could probably drink up the river as well. He may even think in his own mind that he could drink up the river. And it continues on, it says, he taketh it with his eyes, his nose pierceth through the snares. Now, sit back for a minute and think about this. And I'm going to read through it again, the whole thing here. But does this sound like any animal that's alive right now today that you can think of? Anything. You have he eateth grass as an ox. You have the strength in his loins and the force in the navel of his belly. Moves his tail like a cedar, big cedar tree. His bones are like strong pieces of brass. His bones are like bars of iron. He's the chief of the ways of God. Who can make his sword to approach unto him? You know, he's so big, to try to get in there, to try to spear him, or even bring a sword up to him, or shoot him with arrows, it's hard to even get close enough. The sinews of his stones are wrapped together. His skin is so tightly knit that it's hard to even penetrate it with a weak arrow or something like that. You know, it's hard to get close to this creature because one whip of that tail that swings like a cedar tree and you're done. You know, and it says, he that made him can make his sword approach unto him. In other words, like, well, God made him. Now, God can do that. God can approach unto him and take him out. God has the ability. But for any people, that's going to be really difficult. Surely the mountains bring him forth food where all the beasts of the field play. He lieth under the shady trees and the covert of the reed and fens. The shady trees cover him with their shadow. The willows of the brook compass him about. Behold, he drinks up a river and hasteth not. He believes he can draw up the Jordan River into his mouth. He's so dang big. He even thinks he can do it. And if you saw him heading up to the river, you may actually think he might drink up the river. He's that big. Look, this can only be describing one type of animal. It's nothing around today that we see. It's not something that exists in our current period of time, 2019. Clearly, I believe this is describing some sort of sauropod dinosaur like a brachiosaurus or an apatosaurus or something of that nature that God made. God is very detailed in his description here on it so that we can see clearly here today that when these people are bringing out this science falsely so-called and trying to tell lies about the Bible and ruin faith for millions of people because of their lies, things they call facts and throw in textbooks, the reality is God's given us a great detailed description of the animal he made so that we can look at this animal, the bone structure that has been found, and see, there it is. God had said he made it. He said he made it with mankind. So, no, you're not going to find the word dinosaur in the Bible. But you sure do find a dinosaur in the Bible. Absolutely. And this one we spoke about today is Behemoth, the biggest land animal God made. And he is no longer around today, but at one point in time he was. And there's Indian cave etchings and pictographs and stuff all over the world where they have etched into the rock drawings of humans and a big long-necked dinosaur that meets the perfect description of this animal as well as the bones they've found in our modern time period. So you see that humans saw these creatures. It's not like they didn't. They saw them. And they even show pictures of them trying to, you know, lasso it and trying to throw spears at it and stuff. These ancient etchings are all over the place of things like this. You can see them. Just look it up. They're legit. They're not a joke. They're not false. All right? Now, what is false is the science falsely so-called. The fake science out there that they call science that is not actually science. The evolution, the Big Bang Theory, all that nonsense. The reality is the Bible's true. You don't... Look, these people despise God. They don't want him in their mind. They don't want the Bible to be true. They want people to think the Bible's false. The Bible is your basic instructions before leaving Earth. You need to read this. Everything you need to find out's in here. You don't need to read some book written by whoever about whatever subject. Like, people will come to you and say, well, did you read so-and-so's book on the book of Revelation? What they say about it? You should read that, you know. I got the book of Revelation right here. I have it right here. I don't need to go to anybody's book. And I also know, because I have this, God's Word, that these people out there that don't want God retained in their mind, they don't believe, these people would, I believe they would spend any amount of money necessary to create some sort of false thing or a lie to try to disprove this Bible. I believe they would do it. I mean, they're already lying now. What would stop them from doing that? You know what I mean? So, don't look for the word dinosaur in the Bible. Instead, look for a dinosaur in the Bible. And this is just one example, behemoth, but you will find other creatures in here, like Leviathan, the unicorn. There's different creatures in different places. You can find them in here. There's dragons talked about. There's, of course, the dragon where it's talking about the devil, but there's also dragons it's talking about where it's talking about some sort of animal like a dinosaur. So, you know, don't let these people that hate God and hate the Bible, that do not believe, don't let them tear you down with them. It's a fact there are dinosaurs in the Bible. God spoke of them in detail. No animal on earth right now meets this description. An elephant isn't even close. I mean, give me a break. You know, and people like to separate dinosaurs from animals we see every day, as if dinosaurs are some sort of like alien species or something that existed, and the animals today are something totally different. All they are animals that are extinct. They're dead. That's all they are. I mean, if you're going to call a Brachiosaurus a dinosaur, then should you be calling a saber-toothed dinosaur or a saber-toothed tiger a dinosaur? Should you be calling the dodo bird a dinosaur as well? They're extinct too. What's the difference? Mankind lived with both of them, all of them. And that's an absolute fact. So, you know, there's lots of things to get into to go against the falsely so-called science. But that would be another video for another day. So, anyway, I just wanted to share this because, look, dinosaurs are in the Bible. And if you're trying to reach somebody out there with the gospel, you're trying to help them get saved, to see it. And one thing hindering them, holding them up, is the dinosaur thing. And them thinking, well, what about these dinosaurs that, well, they had to exist millions of years ago? Truth of the matter is, now you can show them dinosaurs are here in the Bible. They didn't exist millions of years ago. They were alive with us. They're just extinct now. They're not around anymore, just like a dodo bird, just like a saber-toothed tiger. I mean, those creatures aren't around either. Why is it so hard to understand? And then mention to them the flood. The flood, you know, explains everything, how everything was buried perfectly. So, things like this, although a lot of people don't really care about this as much as they do like end times prophecy and things like that, these types of things are very important when you're trying to reach somebody so that they know that the Bible is true and they can see that and read that themselves. Because if they aren't showing this and don't know about it, which a lot of people don't know about it, then they will just continue on believing that the Bible's a lie because they believe that dinosaurs really did exist millions and billions of years ago, when in reality, it's all right here. Everything you really need is right here.